Welcome to Higher Learning. I am your host, Oz Rashid. This is more than just a podcast. It's a front row seat to how elite leaders build the most iconic of teams. The kind of leaders who spot potential that others overlook, who build cultures people don't want to leave, who set the bar, then raise it. Work and how we work is evolving at a rapid pace like no time in history. Our guests will give you insights on how to stay out in front when it comes to all things talent, leadership, management, artificial intelligence, and developing the skills that actually matter. Whether you're a founder, hiring manager, or just obsessed with building teams the right way, this is your spot. If it's your first time here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, drop a rating, tell a friend who gets it. To our longtime listeners, we appreciate you. Thanks for the continued support. Now, let's get into it. All right, listeners, today's guest has built her career at the intersection of brand, data, and some of the most passionate fan bases in the world. And she has the receipts to prove it. Kristen Banks is the SVP of marketing for the Las Vegas Raiders. But before we get there, let's talk about how she got here, because the path is worth knowing. Kristen spent nearly 8 years at the UFC, but not as a bystander. She came in as the content marketing manager and left as the VP of marketing for digital products. In between, she helped build the marketing infrastructure for one of the fastest growing sports organizations on the planet during the period when UFC went from cult following to mainstream powerhouse. We're talking pay-per-view strategy, UFC Fight Pass, subscriber growth, global broadcast partnerships across ESPN, BT, Sky, direct-to-consumer plays, gaming, streaming, Web3. She did it all. She wasn't just watching the UFC grow. She was part of the engine driving it. And after nearly a decade doing that, she stepped into one of the most iconic and storied brands in professional sports, the Las Vegas Raiders. She's been building, not just maintaining, global marketing rights, fan expansion, brand campaigns that are love letters to the fan base. This isn't someone managing a brand. This is someone shaping one. Today, we're going to talk about what it actually takes to do marketing at this level, what people in other parts of the business often get wrong about it, and what Kristen has learned leading in two of the most male-dominated leagues in professional sports, and what she's focused on building next. Kristen, how the heck are you? Welcome to Higher Learning.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. I am a diehard NFL fan. My favorite team is a little bit south of you, the Arizona Cardinals, but I've been to the
we won't hold that against you.
I know. But I've been to the stadium in Las Vegas. It's a wonderful, incredible, amazing venue that I know that has such a great fan experience. So I'm so pumped to talk to you. I want to learn a little bit more about what it means to market in one of the most iconic, professional leagues and, of course, brands with the Las Vegas Raiders. But let's start here. How'd you get into marketing in the first place? When did you first know that this was your professional purpose and passion?
Well, I will tell you. So growing up, I was obsessed with the idea of people and the way that they have a love affair of certain brands. Like my mother always bought Ivory soap and always bought Breyer's ice cream. And I thought there's something really great about why people have this affinity and this brand promise to, favor those certain brands. And I loved that. And I thought, man, I really want to be a part of that. And I don't know what that looks like as a kid. But as an adult, I thought, Mad Men style. And I might, get a career in New York and work for a high-powered agency. And I ended up going a very different route and going towards the fan entertainment and hospitality sector. And I never looked back. So I couldn't be happier.
It's funny as I'm doing a rewatch with my wife of Mad Men right now and love Dom Draper. A lot of misogyny back then. A very different world in terms of marketing and everything that was going on there. It's kind of jarring, but it's an incredible show. I mean, I love getting the behind the curtain look at what marketing is. So you were the senior VP of marketing, again, with one of the most iconic brands in sports with the Las Vegas Raiders. But before that, I want to dive into that UFC experience I talked about at the beginning, because you were there for 8 years. And this was at a time of incredible growth for the organization. Like I said, it was a cult following, and then it became ubiquitous and everywhere. So what was it like working there? And then tell me, what part did marketing play in the growth of that overall sport and organization?
Yeah, you bet. I started back there in 2015. And when I came in, I'll never forget, my first pay-per-view was UFC 193, which was the famous one with Ronda, Rousey, and Holly Holm. That head kick that was incredible. and was ultimately, televised in Australia, which was wild. From there to see just incredible growth. I mean, they went through a transition of being acquired by Endeavor and WME. Suddenly, the UFC became very Hollywood, and you had exposure to all of these brands, all of these great touch points that weren't accessible before. And then the sport took off in the incredible rise of Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, and just really the globalization of the sport. While I was there, we were suddenly in so many different markets that we hadn't been in previously. For one, getting rights to have events in New York, because at the time, MMA was banned. You couldn't have a live MMA event in New York City. I get to be a part of that. We launched in Moscow, Paris, in Singapore. Many events that had never happened before in certain countries suddenly became a reality, and to see the brand grow and to be a part of that was just astonishing. So
Wow.
I feel eternally grateful.
One of my perceptions about Dana White is that whether it's organic or inorganic, like he seems to have kind of a strong sense of marketing, how to put the brand out there, how to get it in front of people. What was it like just working with somebody like you're in marketing? It must have been great to have somebody that kind of had that vision, was out there pushing it and being the face of the brand.
Yeah, I think Dana is an incredible promoter and has a vision of where he wants to go, and is always thinking on the horizon of what's next and how do we not sit on our laurels, which I think is a really great lesson for anybody in business and marketing of, you know what, you could be great today, but you better be thinking about what's coming tomorrow, because that I think is just an ethos that Dana lives by. And that's really what he and his entire staff are tasked with on a daily basis. And so,
So UFC is a Vegas based brand, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, you are in one of the biggest Vegas based brands, but then the NFL, it's a monolith into itself. And you went to the Raiders, right? And there's a lot of great things going on from a sports perspective in Las Vegas. I mean, there were no professional sports. It was UNLV when I was growing up. Now you've got the Vegas Knights, you got the Aces, you got obviously UFC and the different events that are happening there. NBA Summer Leagues there. I think they're talking about expansion there as well from an NBA perspective. But the NFL is king. We know that. So, but I'm interested. Why the Raiders? What compelled you? What was the desire and the pull to come and join such an incredible organization?
Yeah, well, to your point, Oz, I mean, when I came to Vegas in 2015 at the UFC, I was kind of far removed from all of the other sports, because you were kind of in this bubble of all of what was happening at UFC and this global expansion. But at that time, Vegas was just starting to crop up. I mean, nobody had ever talked about sports in Las Vegas. And to your point, where you have suddenly the NHL and the Golden Knights are in the playoffs and have, I think, game 5 tonight, which is
Stanley Cup
incredible.
Finals. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah. WNBA, the Aces, which is actually a sister brand of the Raiders. So our owner, Mark Davis, owns both.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Usually it's
yeah.
the NBA team that has, because I know in Phoenix, it's the Mercury and the Suns are under
Mhm.
one ownership, but the Raiders and the Aces, wow. And the
Yeah.
Aces are the champions, correct?
It,
Currently?
it is, yeah. I mean, just 3-time world champions, and they're, right next door to us, which is incredible. And then to see that baseball's coming, potentially NBA on the horizon. Yeah, to your point, it's really wild to see how the city has grown. And on top of all of that, back in 2024, as part of working at the Raiders, we also hosted the Super Bowl. So that's wild, because, 10, 20 years ago, you couldn't even air, casino marketing during the Super Bowl. And to have it in Las Vegas, it's incredible where the NFL has come and how Las Vegas is a part of that story. So seeing all that, seeing that growth, when the Raiders came calling, I thought, oh my gosh, this is such an incredible, iconic brand. Allegiant Stadium, the Raiders own Allegiant Stadium, which is unique for any sports team to have that type of ownership and have that placement. To suddenly have that here in Vegas and to have that exposure, that kind of a brand touch point, and just this incredible, iconic opportunity for the city and this economic growth. It was like, why wouldn't I take the chance? Why wouldn't I jump to that opportunity? So, yeah, I think it all lined up perfectly. And to work for a brand like the Raiders, which is incredibly iconic in its own right and has been around since 1960, is just incredible. And to say, okay, well, what is the next stage of that? How do we grow the brand here in Las Vegas? Because you have lots of people coming in from other cities that maybe are fans of different sports teams and haven't necessarily found that love of the Raiders yet. And then how do you grow internationally, which is a big goal of the NFL and a big goal of the Raiders to say, we envision the Raiders being really the world sports team.
Yeah, Arizona and Phoenix, where I'm from, deals with a lot of that, and there's a couple different factors. It's a very transient's the wrong word, but a lot of the people that live there are people that have come from other, usually colder weather places where they have fervent followings of these different sports teams and organizations. A lot of times they bring those allegiances with them, and so in that market, at least, they're kind of having to fight for a piece of the pie with people that have been like maybe cheering for the Bears or the Giants or whatever it may be before moving to Arizona. The other thing is, when you got great weather, when you got so much to do, I mean, no offense to my friends in Cleveland or Detroit or any of these other places, but like it's just harder to kind of get people kind of roused up and passionate. I see it down here in South Florida with the Miami Dolphins and Heat as well. So that's not to say anything is these are the best jobs, the best organizations in the world, but there are different factors that you deal with city to city, right? When you're looking at these different brands. So for the SVP of marketing, first recruiting call, is that Mark Davis, Max Crosby, Tom Brady, someone on the recruiting team?
Depends on the role. But for myself, I will say Mark Davis was a part of, my interview process. He selects who ultimately is part of the leadership team. And so I'm fortunate to work with him, but also my boss, who's an incredible president of the organization, Sandra Douglas Morgan.
Yeah, you told me that. You would have thought been around since the 1960s, iconic brand. You can see the paraphernalia everywhere. But you came in to kind of build the organization to a degree as well, right? So what was kind of the sell to you as somebody that was going to come join? It's not just, come here and support and maintain the vote. We're looking for somebody to take it to the next level. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Oz, if I can give you a little bit of background context then for the audience. So the Raiders moved to Las Vegas in 2019. Prior to that, being in Oakland, very different team at that time, right? And the scale and the size of it. They didn't own their own stadium in Oakland. They had kind of a smaller presence in Oakland, and they had really a very dedicated fan base, kind of blue collar, if you will, which was incredible and certainly iconic in its own right. But moving to Las Vegas meant lots more opportunity. One, as I had mentioned before, just building a stadium, a brand new stadium here in Las Vegas and owning it and having that presence. And that includes everything. So not just all Raiders games that play there, but that's UNLV games, which is our local college. That's third-party events. So that's concerts, sporting events, private events that come in like Google or AT&T that may buy out the stadium. You have all of this incredible, great exposure. And so that means so much more opportunity. And so I think, coming from Oakland to Vegas, it meant, okay, we have to scale in a very big way. And so the way that the organization was built prior had to change from where it is today. One, because just the size and the amount of audience that you're now working towards. There's also unique challenges. I mean, you mentioned it yourself. I mean, there's tourists coming in. I think the figure that Las Vegas, city of Las Vegas reports is 39 million visitors annually, which is wild, right? To that end, even when we have a Raiders home game, you've got lots of visitors coming in because they're like, oh, let me look at the schedule for the NFL. Where am I going to travel to see my team? Oh, Vegas is fun.
Same thing happens in Arizona. We have a lot. Whenever you go to our stadium, unfortunately, you're going to see, depending on the fan base, there's going to be a ton of those fans. Well, guess what? When you live in Minnesota and you look at the schedule, you're like, I'd really like to get down to warm weather Arizona in the winter months, or I'd like to go to Vegas and visit one of those great hotels and see a show and see my team. So, I mean, that's just kind of part of it. It's different.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, to all of that point, you're thinking, okay, well, how do I really capture this audience? And how do I capture audiences who maybe haven't looked at the Raiders before? Locally, our goal is to kind of win the hearts and minds here and say, even if we're not your favorite team, maybe we're your second team, maybe we're your third team. How do we get you to come to the stadium for a game? How do we get you to watch at home or potentially come in for a tour at Allegiant Stadium or buy a t-shirt? There's so many ways in which to transact or engage with the Raiders brand. And that has grown exponentially since the team moved here to Las Vegas. So there's lots of ways, and my group that's expanding to say, okay, how do we leverage all of these touch points, and how do we make sure that we're speaking to each unique audience that's going to appeal to them?
You got the number one quarterback drafted coming in too. So there's a lot going on right now. It's a lot. It's got to be an exciting time to be a Las Vegas Raider. One of the things that I think, and I say this about hiring all the time, is that I think sometimes people can misunderstand how complex and sophisticated marketing can be. So I'm interested what you think makes a difference between someone very good and great in the space. And what's maybe something people in different areas of the business might not fully understand about how nuanced and complex marketing can be.
Yeah, I love that question because I think that's something that no matter what industry you're in, if your career is in marketing, you've experienced this at some point. And I think that's partially because just the way in which marketing has evolved and is changing just with the growth of technology, the advent of AI, things moving at a rapid pace. And so you have to stay up with that technology. But the demands are higher too. And if I can tell you a little bit just about my personal experience in being here at the Raiders, is that one of the things I say when it comes to looking at how I formulate an ideal team is, when I'm hiring and I'm thinking about marketing, I want somebody who's strategic. A lot of people think, oh, marketing's great ideas and it's the fun, splashy stuff and it has to do with advertising. And that's a small piece of it. Advertising is great, but if you're not aiming, it's like shooting darts at a dartboard. You have to aim properly, and that comes with having reasoning, having a goal set in mind, and being very strategic of how you're going to reach that goal and ultimately how you're going to report on that goal after you've accomplished what you set out to do. And a lot of times that tends to fail. And so when I'm thinking about, an ideal candidate or somebody for a marketing role, I want somebody who's thinking about it from start to finish and where do we have to go from next.
All right, hold that thought. We're going to get back into the hiring in a second, but I got one more question for you. And I don't think I'm breaking any news when I say this, but the UFC and NFL are obviously male-dominated field to some degree and in the ring as well. I have to imagine there's a heavy male population employed in both organizations on the back end as well. So as a female leader in two of the biggest professional sports leagues, I'm just interested, what's the myth versus the reality for women in the industry? And maybe if there's a young lady listening to this right now who's like either thinking about going into the sports industry or is already in the sports industry, do you have any advice you'd give to them to help make their career or make that decision about maybe moving into the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for one, I think it's constantly changing. When I was coming up, there was no such thing as sports business or sports marketing careers in school. You couldn't get a degree in those. You could get a degree in business administration, you could get a degree in marketing, but you couldn't get that type of specialty. So the fact that they had that now is awesome. And I would say for people, starting out in their careers, leverage every opportunity that's in that specialty. For me, I never expected to be in sports. I kind of fell into it. And the reason I fell into it, I think, is because one, I was doing things that were really focused on fans. And so prior to Raiders and prior to UFC, I worked for Universal, NBC Universal and Comcast, and worked on major brands like Harry Potter and Transformers. And those have passionate fan bases, but that fandom looks very different than obviously a sports fan. But that's the thing. I think really finding your niche, something that you're passionate about, and leaning into that. I think that's what really helped me ultimately secure a career in sports. And then two, the way in which I kind of propelled that forward is constantly thinking about what's next and being on top of it. Whether that's my male counterparts or that's thinking about what I want to do as a female leader, it's having a unique perspective and saying, no matter the type of fan, there's lots of things that are happening in the way that fans want to be communicated to and have and engage. And it looks very differently. And so whether you're male, female, whether you're younger, demo, whether you're older, different ethnicities. And so I think you have to really play into that no matter who you're speaking with, that you have to have unique and personalized content that's bespoke to them. And I think as a female leader and in this space, because it's not as common, that you really have that extra lens that you put when you're thinking about how you build your strategic plans.
And I really think what you said there is like this is one of the biggest business imperatives around diversity in general. Like that your team makeup, particularly in marketing, should probably reflect to some degree the diversity of your fan base and your customer base, right? How can you reach out to different minorities, to females, to older demographics, younger demographics, if you're not getting that perspective, right? At least as part of what you're trying to put together from that end-to-end perspective, like you talked about. So totally agree with you. I love that where there's more opportunities now than ever for women and people of color to be able to get these great executive level jobs in these great iconic sports brands and organizations. And it's an amazing. I think you gave great advice there. I hope somebody listened, pick something up that they can use as they go forward.
Finding the right talent for your team doesn't have to be a struggle. Meet Aon Hire, the world's first hiring experience management platform designed to transform the way you hire. Powered by AI, Aon Hire takes the hassle out of every step in the process. From smart resume analysis to customized interview questions, it saves you time, money, and effort. Plus, with real-time insights from every interview, you can quickly identify top candidates, reduce turnover, and stay on budget. And forget about note-taking, Aon Hire takes care of that for you. Ready to revolutionize your hiring process? Visit aonhire.com and get started today.
And as I would say, where I started at in sports at UFC and where I'm now with Raiders, I am very fortunate to say I am in a very diverse, workforce here at Raiders. Our leadership group, one, I report to a female president, which is very unique in the NFL, right? There are little girls that want her autograph, which is incredible, right? That little girls see themselves as the next NFL president. That probably didn't happen, 20, 30 years ago. To that end, then, too, there's a very diverse makeup, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's gender, in terms of the leadership group, and that permeates through the whole organization. And so I feel very proud to say, wow, I feel like maybe that wasn't the case even in my career coming up, but to see that now and to see it realized is pretty incredible.
I got 3 preteen teen daughters. I didn't tell you this yet, but my dad is a humongous Raiders fan. So I think what I got to do is
that's awesome.
I got to get a trip down to Las Vegas. I'll bring my dad. I'll bring my girls. We can meet the president of the organization. Because you're right. That's so, it's as much about like inclusivity, but also understanding of like, oh, I can see somebody like me already in this position. That allows me to dream bigger and feel like things are possible, right? So I love that. Great story. I appreciate you telling that. It sounds like you're in a really good place, so I'm pumped about that. Let's talk hiring because that's what pays the bills here at the Old Hire Learning Podcast. You talked about it a little bit in terms of when you're bringing in people into your marketing organization, you want that kind of end-to-end knowledge or at least kind of experience and perspective. But let's talk about hiring philosophy, and maybe that's part of it. Like, do you have a core hiring philosophy for the type of marketeers that you want to bring into your organization?
No, I would say, one, I'm looking for the right role and I'm looking for somebody that's passionate. I can't think the basics, right? But that's really, I think, any role. I think you want somebody that's going to be successful no matter whether you're selling widgets or you're selling, butts in seats or you're selling viewership. You ultimately want somebody who's going to really get behind what they're doing and believe in what they're doing. So I think that's first and foremost. I think the second piece in terms of just what I look for when I'm hiring or that special sauce is I really want somebody, not necessarily that might have the same background and experience. It doesn't mean that they all just came from sports, but do they have a unique discipline for the type of role that I'm hiring for, right? I mentioned it again, marketing's changing. It has to be innovative. You have to constantly be thinking about technological advancements and what's next. I want the person that's specialized in the type of specifics because there's so many aspects of marketing. And I have even within my division, there's marketing comms, there's marketing technology, there's brand, there's creative. So I'm really looking for somebody that's also a subject matter expert in their field. And then to say, does that translate for the unique work that I'm looking for to hire at the Raiders?
Okay. Walk me through kind of like what a typical interview would be like with you. Like, do you have favorite questions that you like to ask? Are there ones that are very common that you ask most employees? I don't want to give all the secret sauce away, but just share with us.
Yeah. I always want to know, I kind of always want to know the good and the bad, So I want somebody to tell me, hey, so at some point where they've had a challenge or they've struggled with something and how they've overcome it. I also
Okay.
want to know something that they're particularly proud of. And I think if you can't do those two basics, I think that's a challenge. Then that's like, I don't know then that we're gonna gel. So I think those are just first and foremost. And then what I'm really excited about, or which I think is when people take initiative. One, like research the role that you're thinking about. Come with some ideas. When I get on the phone or meet somebody in person and they're here for an interview and they haven't done any of that, I think, okay, they're coming in a bit blind. Let's really have a conversation versus me just asking, hey, basic interview questions about their role and responsibility and their background. Tell me why it excites you. Tell me what you're already thinking about the role.
Yeah, that'd be a humongous red flag, not a Buccaneers flag, but a red flag if a candidate came in and they weren't having some sort of knowledge about what they were walking into. They didn't have some sort of questions. That's going to belie that passion that you were talking about earlier. That's not going to be a very good indicator in that case. And I love having them get into the adversity or challenges that they faced because there's so many of the cliche questions like, tell me your biggest weakness. Oh, I'm too much of a perfectionist. I mean, we hear stuff like that, but when you actually make somebody get into the nitty gritty of, here are the things that went wrong. Here's how I approached it. Here's how I handled it. Here's the outcome. And hopefully got better from it. I think you can learn a lot about a person potentially as a professional and what they'll look like on the team. Because we always know it's not puppy dogs and lollipops when it comes to work. Sometimes there's going to be challenges and adversity. And you want to know that you have somebody that you want to work with in those scenarios and has been through those scenarios in the past. All right. If I ask you for a memorable interview experience, it could be you interviewing, it could be you interviewing somebody. I have to imagine like UFC, NFL, there's got to be some interesting ones. You don't got to name names, but just maybe a good story or maybe something that stood out to you.
Oh man. Okay. So because I just mentioned, I talked about challenges and wins. I'll give you one that was probably like memorable for bad reasons. And then I'll give you one that was for good reasons.
So let's go.
So there was one interview throughout my career where I was interviewing for this role and I was really excited about the position. And I won't say where it was with or whom, but I'll say, the interviewer asked me only personality questions. They were like, well, if you were in a room full of tigers and they were really growling and they were unhappy, what would you do about it? I thought, okay. What is that? And so I think, they were.
That's how you responded. What'd you say?
I think it was like, oh, well, I'm like, I might have some bubble gum in my purse. So I suppose I would throw that at them. But I mean, that's a tough one where I'm like, okay, I'm not getting a chance to really dive into. So I think it's trying to take the conversation and say, okay, well, how can I get you want to know more about me or know my personality or how I might solve a problem, but I also want to give you a little bit of background on myself and I want to talk about the role. So I feel like it was a weird one where I was like, I'll never forget it.
Can I tell you something about that? I find, and I have a couple, I've obviously worked with tons of hiring leaders and executives and everybody's got lots of different interviewing styles and everybody thinks they're amazing at interviewing.
Right.
That data doesn't always back that up. Doesn't ever back that up, to be honest. But I remember we have one real like famous executive that worked at one of our clients who would, bring up a picture of a wolf, and ask people like really challenging questions about like, what would you do in the face of this or, da 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 da.
Right.
And I think those are more about like ego, if I'm being honest. Like those are the type of things that like you go and you say, yeah, I asked this question, or I like to throw them off and I like to see how they respond. But the reality is that you're not really getting good information about the person and you have such limited time to learn somebody. And also you want to build a rapport in case it's somebody you actually want to hire. I just think those are so self-defeating. And I think fortunately I've seen we've evolved away from that a little bit more, but God, I've got so many stories of people just throwing out like, how many pizzas are sold in Florida, right? Or, how do you handle this review or things like that? I think it's important to understand how somebody thinks. I think there are different, more applicable ways to maybe ask questions that could get you that. So go ahead. I cut you off. You said you had a memorable, positive one as well.
Yeah,
right?
no, I mean, I agree 100% to your point. I think it's weird, the trick questions. And I think, I want to be as real with an interviewee as possible because I want to try to get a sense of who they are as best you can. Obviously, we all act a little bit differently when we're going through an interview process and it's nerve-wracking. And especially, if you're really excited and you want the role, there's all of that nerves and expectation boiled in there and you only have a short amount of time to, sell yourself ultimately. So I agree 100%. It's weird when you get those wacky questions. To a good one, though, I'll say is, I was interviewing somebody and they came in with a little bit of a deck of what they were like, hey, I happened to do some research on your YouTube channel. And as I was reviewing it, I thought of this and I thought of this and I put together this presentation on that. And I thought, wow, that's incredible that they gave it that much time and attention. And it gave us something else to really talk about and dive into, right? And so without them even, coming in yet for like a physical interview, you kind of do those virtuals first. I just thought that shows an incredible initiative and how passionate they are.
Heard about the initiative earlier, right?
Yeah,
That's a great
exactly.
sign. And they did that in the first interview with you, huh?
Second interview, but yeah, live and in person. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. I imagine there's like a lot of people you talk to who just come in and they're like, "Oh my God, this is my dream job. I've always wanted to work here." Da 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 da. How do you give a realistic job preview to somebody in the interview experience so they'll know what it's like to work with you and what it's like to work in your organization? I'm sure there are things that are not always easy and that are challenges, and I'm sure you want people to know that coming in. How do you try to articulate that, especially if you know you have the person in front of you that you think could be a potentially a good hire?
Yeah. Well, I'll say to that, I think the first part, and I sound a little bit of like a broken record, but I'm like, specialize in your niche. When people say to me, "Oh my gosh, I'm such a fan," I'm the biggest fan. I really want to work here. Great that you're a fan. I love that you're a fan, but that doesn't always translate into being great for the role, right? Or, just because I'm a fan of something doesn't mean that that makes sense, though, for me to make that my career there, right?
Yeah,
There's a difference between kind of passion and a hobby versus a job and a career.
for sure.
So I think that's first and foremost. I'm like, okay, well, why do you really want this job? Don't just tell me that you're just a big fan. That's hard to do it. Tell me what excites you about the role, right? Tell me what it is about the type of marketing that I might be hiring for that you're passionate about. Why does that excite you? Because that's really the nuts and bolts of the role. And let's face it, a lot of the stuff behind the scenes in marketing is not glamorous. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of painstaking, process. It's, moving things on a dime when you work in the sports and entertainment industry. And so you got to be quick and you got to be nimble. And sometimes that can be really stressful. And I also want people who are constantly thinking, well, not just about marketing, but how am I doing something that's going to really move the industry? How am I going to be doing something that's exciting and is going to really, disrupt? And that's not always easy to do. So I want somebody who can tell me, hey, in their background or their previous experience, why they loved what they did and how they think they could apply it in this type of role.
That's really good stuff. What about when you miss? Because we all do. And one of the reasons I decided to dedicate my life to this space is because we've all got, if you've done any amount of hiring, you got dozens of stories of misses and mistakes and when it's gone wrong. Now, hopefully, over time, you're hopefully learning about some biases, conscious or unconscious, or things that, maybe you didn't have a head around until you had some more experience. Is there anything you can look back throughout your career, like something that you had to learn, or maybe it's something that you got caught and you made a couple bad hires? Any themes there?
Sure. I think, sometimes, one, I think whenever I'm hiring, I always also like to say it's never me just making the sole decision alone, right? I really believe in whether it's my fellow team members, whether it's some of my team that may report to this role, having a stake or getting to at least interview, that you're interviewing somebody based on, one, their skill and acumen, two, on their personality, or they got to be a good fit, cultural fit, and they got to gel with the team. And three, just, how are they overall thinking about their entire career and where would they be able to use their unique skills and assets if they were to take this role on. So I'm kind of considering those three things. And I think, look, I'll say I've certainly had some bad hires and some where I was like, oh, man, what did I get right? That seemed like the perfect fit. What happened? And I think that's just part of the trade. I think, there are people that interview great and still, sometimes it just doesn't pan out, or, what they said, what they say didn't match their actions when ultimately they then accepted the role and were in that spot. So
Yeah, imagine it could be doubly or hard in marketing because if somebody's effectively good at marketing, they can market themselves, but that doesn't mean they can come in and they can do the job, right? Necessarily. So sometimes it's hard to parse through just in like 3 or 4 interviews. I'm gonna be working with this person, 8 hours a day at least. I want to know, how am I gonna know what they really do here? And that's why it's an inexact science, right?
Yeah, yeah. And to your point, I think that I'll say, just to caveat that, I think they're good at positioning themselves, people. They might not be great at marketing themselves, because I'll again say good marketer is somebody who's really thinking from the beginning to end. Uh, and that's not always the case.
Good call. Good call out. All right, last hiring question. Um, if I ask you about the best hire you've ever made, does somebody come to mind? You don't got to name names, but is that when I say the best hire I ever made, does somebody come to mind?
Man, I mean, I think there's been a lot of great ones, honestly. And I always say, when somebody, whether I've hired them directly, whether I acquired them because I started in a new role and there was kind of some team members, I always say, you have me for life, as corny as that sounds. I want to be a mentor. I want to be a coach. So I think the best, candidates I've ever had are the ones that are, really live up to what they say.
In the interview? Yeah, or some surpass. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
my philosophy on interviewing is I am gonna get 50% of what you're telling me, and then I have to make the decision, should I still hire you if I'm gonna whatever my feeling is, because I think a lot of it is, but then sometimes you get these rare circumstances where they're 50 to 100% better than you thought they were gonna be, and, like,
Yeah.
because you didn't know it until you saw it in action. Those are always the best situations. My question there was gonna be, though, when did you know? Like, how soon? Like, is it, like, day 30, year 1, 6 months
I
in the
mean,
interview?
I'm thinking of, there's like a handful that come to mind, and I'm like, well, all of them were different and unique cases, you
Okay.
know? And there was either something that happened or something that hit the fan. Maybe it was, within their first 30 days, maybe it was a year into them. And it was, how did they deal with that particular problem? And where was their character at that time? Right. And how did they overcome what they were going through? Because that undoubtedly will always happen. But the best ones are the ones that can really um, get through it, navigate it, work collaboratively with myself and their teammates, and just be a great human being. I think that's really the.
Yeah, I sound like a broken record to all our employees here, but I've said for a long time, there's 3 ways to get promoted at MSH. First one is gotta get outstanding results. Like,
Mhm.
that's a big part of the job, right? Second one is, what do our customers or candidates say to me, or your peers in the organization say to me unsolicited, right? When it comes to talking about that. If I'm getting a lot of really positive, this person's really killing it, they're doing good, and I'm collecting enough data points, it's a big one. But the third one is exactly what you just said. Have you come through in the fire? Have you come through when it felt like the odds were stacked against us? It was a really big issue. You problem solved it, you solutioned it, you owned it, you took it. If you have enough of those, you're going to do really well at any job, right? Because that's usually what when the chips are down, when you most need someone to shine through. And the people that do that the best are the ones that typically are the ones that shoot their way up in an organization and create resonance with the leadership because they know they can be counted on, they know they're reliable. So I think you're spot on with that. All right, I'm going to ask you a few questions, then we're going to do our lightning round. So, real fast, AI in your personal life. Do you have a use case that you want to share with us? Is there a way that you're using either ChatGPT or Claude and to get something better in your personal life?
I will say, so personal life, I use it for travel itineraries and home design. I will say, really fantastic, some of the generative AI use cases and what you can do. I feel like it saves me, honestly, a lot of time and money. So I would think of
Love
it
that.
that way.
Certainly, you're not bringing an interior home designer. You got Claude in there helping out, right? That
There we
helps.
go. Yeah.
Do you have any books you've read or either content you've seen recently on TV or in a movie that you'd recommend for our listeners? Anything that's kind of top of mind when I ask you that?
Ooh, I'm actually reading one. Well, no, I'm listening to a podcast recently by Mel Robbins, and it probably came out just maybe in the past year, but it's also with former Secret Service agents. Her name is Evie Pompora. I'm hoping I'm not butchering her last name, but it's talking about like, how do you, and she's a human lie detector. So she worked for the Secret Service for years. And so Mel Robbins on this podcast is interviewing her. She's talking about like, what are the ways in which you can be more confident, or how do you show up. And so I love some of the conversation around self-doubt and self-acceptance. And sometimes we may think that we have the most confidence in certain instances, and then the others we don't, and why that is. And I think it's really fascinating to understand. And then one, to be able to also, whether you're working with a colleague, whether you're working with maybe a particularly difficult client, to really say, okay, what is it that makes them tick? And I think that Evie does a great job of explaining it from her background and experience that a lot of people could apply in their regular day life.
All right, we'll include that in the show notes. So if anybody wants to track along and listen to it, they can. That's awesome. I appreciate the suggestion. All right, last one before the lightning round. If you had to give 20-year-old Kristen advice that you didn't know then, but that you know now, what would it be?
Okay, so I would say slow down. So when I graduated college, maybe not at 20, well, I was still in college at 20, but I was somebody that I didn't come from money. I didn't have all these major contacts. I'm 100% self-made. I didn't know anybody in the business industry. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a nurse. So I would just say I at that point was like, okay, I got to graduate college. I got to pay off student loans. How am I going to do that? I got to get a job fast. I got to focus on this. I got to be successful out of this. And it was like, yeah, but I also need to live too. So I would say some of it is also a little bit of just balance and integration,
You were in Vegas at that time or not? Because you
No.
weren't getting. Okay, see that might have helped, right? If you would have been, you could have gotten a little more of that youth and fun. That's great advice. I
That's
love
true.
that.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. I'm going to ask you some lightning round questions. They're going to be kind of interspersed from things that we've talked about
Okay.
here in the podcast. First one, what's the best restaurant you'd recommend in Las Vegas?
Ooh. I will say I love Top of the World at the Strat. It's
Okay,
an oldie but goodie.
love it. What's your favorite hotel?
Aria.
Aria, that's my daughter's name. Actually, love that. And Cosmo right there too.
Yeah.
What's something off the beaten path in Vegas that people typically wouldn't do, but that you would recommend for somebody visiting?
Ooh, Arts District. So it's kind of in downtown Las Vegas. It's got kind of a cool vibe, a lot of local restaurants, a lot of like cool kind of speakeasy type bars. Just really fun atmosphere. So I would say that's a really great place to check out. Also, the drinks are cheaper too, like on, no offense to our partners and all of our folks, but sometimes if you're looking for like,
College Oz knew
15
all
bucks.
the cheap places to go to find, to have a great Vegas time. We used to go up there like 3 or 4 times a year because I went to the University of Arizona. So
Yeah.
we'd go there for March Madness and Halloween and spring break and different things. And so when you have no money and you're in Vegas, you really got to figure out how you navigate to be able to find the things that you need to find. So certainly can appreciate that. All right. You mentioned at the top, your mom, favorite brands, Ivory, Briars. What are your top 3 favorite brands?
Ooh, okay. So I would say Sonos. I love the speakers. I think they do an incredible job.
Okay.
I would also say it's kind of a vegan cheese brand, so I don't know that it's known very well, but it's called Olay, and I really love them.
Okay.
And then I think the third one, just because they do an incredible job of marketing, they're always kind of thinking cutting edge. I would also say Tostitos.
Tostitos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love that. I have the 3 most cliche ones, and I'm just gonna say them. Nike, as you can see, I collect Jordan 1. Yeah. Apple, I got everything Apple, right? And Tesla. I love my Tesla.
Wow, yeah. See, those are all
Those are
those are
3.
like on the top 100. I was
I
trying to be a
know.
little more
I
obscure.
got. You know what? You're right. I've got to find kind of the underrated brands that I'm gonna come back to you on that. I'm gonna reopen that one up. Our last one.
Okay.
We're a year from now. Looking back, what's the Raiders' record? What'd they do?
You can't give me that one, Oz. That's like
17-0.
that's like
17-0.
superstitious. That's superstitious. You can't. But I'm super
I won't
excited
do
for the season.
Here's what I'm gonna do. Here's what I'm gonna do as a dedicated sports fan. I'm gonna tell you, Vegas is in the playoffs. Mendoza wins Offensive Rookie of the Year, and you guys have a exciting, great season. Unlike my Arizona Cardinals, who I think are trying to lose so that we can draft a quarterback. So I'm really going to be pulling for you all this year. And if I have an opportunity to get out to a game, I'll let you know. Kristen, thanks for spending some time with me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, this was great, Oz. Thank you so much for having me. It was fabulous.